from the Edge of the Web studios, here's what we're looking at this week.
Welcome back to Edge of the Web, a special news segment for episode 348 of Edge of the Web Radio. Thanks for joining us. We're at the Site Strategics Digital Marketing News Desk, title sponsor for the show. Joining me online this week to take all the digital marketing news is the none other, but the other Aaron out there, Aaron Levy of Tenuity. Sir, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're more than welcome. Well, we got a number of articles to dive in here, and we certainly want our audience to go check out the full interview with Aaron, and that will be linked here shortly. So, first and foremost, before getting into the news, I wanted to actually provide an update, especially during this crisis time right now. There's a lot of great participants and educators out there in the marketing space that are wanting to give back to the community. There's a lot of social chatter of different resources to provide those who are potentially even out of work right now or who are working remotely. So during these challenging times, we want to be able to give some of this information to our listeners. So places to check out online. Alita Solis has actually set up a Discord group called Remote Water Cooler. And you can actually go see remoteworking.net, and there's a huge amount of resources about working remotely. And most of, Aaron, about half your staff is actually working remotely regularly, right?
Yeah, about 40% of Tenuity in total is remote, and of my personal team, I'd say a little bit over half of it is remote. And we're, like most companies, very flexible. So on a given day, I have no idea who's in the office or not. So it's kind of ingrained into us, but it's still been weird getting used to.
Yeah, and there's a lot more adoption of this for companies that aren't used to this, and so a bit of ahead of the curve from Tenuity, but there's resources for those employers as well of how you actually manage your employees remotely, because those things are challenging. There's scenarios in which a company, if they're not prepared for it, can actually really be misaligned, at least from the top down. So go over to remote water coolers for SEMs and SEOs and digital marketers. Michael King at MyCoolKing on Twitter, he actually lit up a spreadsheet open for individuals in the marketing community to log their name as an available resource if they've actually lost their job. I think there's over 600 purveyors of SEO, SEM, and different content marketing and digital marketing out there. It was a fantastic thing that he did, and boy, people are just filing in. So if you're an employer who's looking for these resources, they're right there for you. And on top of that, our friend Lily Ray actually opened up a quick email for marketers to assist in education, to provide training during this time. She had a form online that you can submit your information if you're wanting to be able to educate or help train individuals during this particular time. It's available as well. So all those links are going to be in the show notes for the page. Please check those out. We want to applaud those guys greatly for what they're doing, and there's a huge amount of interaction during this particular time. All right, so jumping in to our first news article over at Android Police. Check this out. Google Podcasts get proper queue, auto downloads, and bottom bar in big redesign. Thank God. Google Podcast, yes! May be well integrated with Assistant and Home and Nest speakers, but compared to many other players out there, it's always been rather lackluster, and that's putting it nicely. Among other things, people have been complaining about missing features such as queues and auto downloads. It looks like Google actually took this criticism to heart, and it's starting to roll out a new redesigned version of podcasts, and that adds actually up to those two features, as well as bottom tabs and an improved home screen. This is from Manuel Banau over at Android Police. So if you haven't checked it out, you got to go have a look at this. And Aaron, are you a big Google Podcast or an iTunes podcast listener?
Neither. I actually
well,
wound
I
up
probably
doing
should
everything.
have that other option there, right?
Yeah, I wound up doing everything through Spotify just because I was an early adopter and I've used it forever. It is interesting though. I have one of each voice device in my house. I have an Echo, I have a Google Home, and I have a Cortana tower.
Wow, really?
Yeah,
that's like vintage, isn't it?
our friends at Microsoft gave it to me a while ago as a birthday gift, I believe, and it actually sounds better than everything, but
really
it doesn't work quite as well.
Oh man, well, sorry to hear that.
It's interesting to hear how I listen to podcasts a lot, as I'm sure everyone does, especially when they're isolated in their own homes for quite some time.
Yep.
but it's interesting to see hear how they default to Alexa play XYZ podcast. Sometimes they go to Stitcher, sometimes they go to TuneIn, sometimes they do their own thing. So this move from Google makes a ton of sense, that if you have your own product and you can make it good, then all the data is yours.
Absolutely. And boy, this has been kind of it hasn't been watered. This garden hasn't been watered for a while. It certainly needed a revamp, and they have gotten a lot better. If you look at some of the screens, and we'll put this in the show notes as well. All the news articles go there. They've done a lot to be able to improve the interactivity and the functionality of that. So please go check this out. And we always want to bring podcast news items, especially. I mean, you're right. Is that there's going to be a heck of a lot more consumption in the podcast space and the live stream space now that everybody's working from home. So the platforms better step up their game a little bit. So talking about something that's not stepping up their game, they're actually kind of dropping, but actually not as bad as we thought. From Search Engine Land, from Ginny Marvin, the next article here regarding the coronavirus, eMarketers lowers global ad spend projections for 2020. Now, worldwide ad spend is still expected to grow compared to last year, and we've had a momentum galore here over the last couple of years. And this is from research firm eMarketer, but it has lowered its growth projections to nearly 3%. Worldwide media ad spend will increase by 7% to $691.7 billion in 2020 over the prior year, down from the earlier growth estimate of 7.4% at 712 million. 712 million. There we go. Billion with a B. Gosh, it's getting too darn excited here with these numbers. So, Aaron, you're in the ad marketing space. We certainly weren't surprised by this changeover, but still, it's a huge amount of projected growth. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still a ton. The fact that it's still forecast to grow at all, when obviously we see what the stock market is doing right now and see what every market is doing right now. I mean, look, being in digital media, and for those of you who are SEOs, it's an area that I think we're all going to come back stronger. Obviously when we're all isolated into our little office cubes or apartments or whatever, everything's going to go online. Everyone's going to figure out how to do it. Everyone's going to adapt their systems to it. So in turn, us in digital media are still, in my opinion, in an absolutely great spot. There's an old saying, I forget who it is. I feel like this was an Ogilvy thing, but you never waste a crisis.
Oh yeah.
This is an interesting, and it's weird to call it an opportunity, but it's an interesting opportunity for all of us to devote some of our idle time to reinventing some of these systems and to making sure that ad spend keeps on growing. What I did think was interesting, and I haven't read the source article quite yet, but it was interesting that they didn't really, it wasn't like there was a blip, like they think like, oh, coronavirus or COVID is just going to happen and then everything will be right back where we thought it would be. It looks like they, to use a current phrase, flattened the curve a little bit and just sort of dropped everything down. So I suspect it's got a lot to do with just broader media in general, how media is behaving, assuming people are going to get more efficient or adjust their media spend. Certainly there have been plenty of articles out there about Adidas and Procter & Gamble cutting their ad spend in half and doing better. Right. So I suspect this revision has a lot to do with, the forward-facing economy, not just the impact that's happening now.
Absolutely, and the article also reflects back on some changes in warehousing space. Amazon advertising, for example, was topped $14 billion last year, is likely to take a hit over the next 4 weeks as it holds off accepting non-essential items. So it's not just changing trajectory of marketing expenditures. There's an entire ecosystem that's changing, and ad spend has to reflect those impediments, right? For lack of a better description.
Right. We've seen some really interesting things from a lot of different marketers. Again, a lot of our clients are having tons of different approaches to this, but some of the smarter ones that we've seen are people who are really proactive communicators and are embrace the idleness, for lack of a better word. Shifting your conversion type. Like if your warehouse is going to be empty, don't sell stuff that you won't have. Right. So instead shift it to maybe an email capture or start building a relationship with a customer from a marketing perspective.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah.
If anything, it might make us be better marketers because we have to look at people on a longer term basis. It's less of a transactional relationship. I have a sneaking suspicion most people's retargeting ads are going to do really terrible the next couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But that is maybe okay because that'll reward the people who have a longer term vision.
And if marketers aren't paying attention to the existing inventory, and we're going to cover this in our full interview here, but if they're not paying attention to the existing marketing and the assets that are out there, and it's not shifting, and it's actually not aligning with some of the impediments and restrictions that are out there, then it's kind of tone deaf. It's not responsive to the market and the crisis at the moment. So, there's going to be some wasted money there as well because of this. So it's not only the downshifting and removal of some expenditures, but it's also going to be non-effective advertising until everybody gets in the right headspace, right?
Right, exactly.
Alrighty. So our last article, talking about getting in the right headspace or maybe the wrong headspace, as case may be. Google My Business. This is a article over at Review Fraud. If you want to go check that out, Google My Business overreacts to COVID-19. On Friday, March 20th, Google removed the ability for users to post reviews on Google My Business on their listings. So not only was the ability to post a review disabled, but Google also disabled the ability for businesses to respond to reviews as well. So currently, if a user leaves a review, Google is confirming that the review was posted, and the user can see the review in their account. Once the user logs out of it, they won't be able to see the review. The business will not get the review and has no way of seeing it. It's unclear if the review will be published at a later date or if the review will just disappear into the ether. Now, there's certainly... They're putting a dampening field on everything just to kind of freeze the system, I guess, because there are some hyper-reactive consumers out there that can certainly trash a brand possibly incorrectly in the heightened crisis here. But having an organization that has given free communication and open interaction of customers online, all of a sudden there's no responsibility or review submission ability. I mean, these things it's a bit of a strong hand, don't you think, Aaron?
It does. This feels to me a little bit like a resourcing thing.
Yeah.
So while I'm sure that there's a bazillion new reviews coming in.
Sure.
I would venture to guess that a ton of them will require manual review, given the rolling phases of all these areas and how every different city is acting. I'm sure that there would be plenty of annoyed reviews of, I tried to go to this business, but they were takeout only. I can't even believe that. Why are they even a business?
Right, exactly.
All those sorts of things where, and when we get into the main interview talking about automation, all these things that were pretty easy to discern before are now not.
Right.
So should a business be punished or rewarded for what they did in a time of crisis? It's a complicated question.
It is.
In most cases with Google, as I'm sure SEO folks have seen, we from a paid media side see all the time, if there's a complicated decision, Google plants a firm stake and stays there. So
yeah, exactly.
We'll see what they wind up doing with these longer term, but this sort of a move, and I wouldn't be surprised to see more of them. These things where like there's these really, really complicated judgment calls that a machine can't make right. A lot of times, a lot of the platforms will just be like, we're just going to step away. We're going to throw up our hands and get away.
But it's not that they just moved away from review availability. They also kind of doubled and tripled down. They also removed all the Q&A sections completely from Google My Business. Instead of turning off the ability to post a new question, they just removed the feature completely. And to top it all off, the worst thing that Google has done is starting to marking businesses as temporarily closed. Google came up with a method to determine which business was open and which one was closed. And unfortunately, it appears that Google has mistakenly been marking open businesses as temporarily closed. And that's terrible. And this time right now, where business is so important, to be able to have a machine read the signals and shut the Google My Business doors, realistically, I mean, that's sloppy right there.
It could use some adjustment. I'm sure that this is it's their first time dealing with this, so I'm sure that they're going to get it right next time.
Wow. Oh, I see how you are. He's just not going to call it, is he?
No, I mean, look, it's a complicated decision, and I'm sure the Q&A thing, if you think about it, all of those questions are going to be, all the questions that are there now are wrong now.
Right.
All the questions that will be written now and answered now will be wrong later. So that's the sort of, when I say it's a resourcing thing, I don't just mean like, oh, there's a bunch of engineers that like they don't feel like working on it. It's much more of, okay, everything that happens now, this is the only time that it's going to happen.
Exactly.
Lord willing.
Yep.
So everything that's now is completely new and completely isolated, and we're, again, hope it's never going to happen again. So all this stuff that would be produced now is all going to have to be either undone or addressed in the future. So it winds up being a huge human capital issue to solve.
Yeah, you're really right. And I know I'm pushing on you, but I mean, literally, it's the case in point that this is a slice in time. And you're right, anything that happened before was then and will be again in that space. So taking some of the interdependencies off, taking some of the interaction off makes perfect sense. But we're actually, our own GMBs are being quarantined right now from actually
that's a good way to put it.
being interactive, so you would trust that consumers would have a presence of mind to know what they're talking about during this particular crisis. But I mean, yeah, taking those abilities off the table for right now may actually be a better scenario just to protect the innocent, so to speak.
It's an interesting space as well, because right now we're at a spot where automation in Googlebot is actually slow. It's slow relative to how fast things are moving in the world.
Right.
So like Philadelphia went from, in the matter of hours to days to minutes to even seconds, a business goes from open to close and there's nothing that a person could do about it.
Yeah.
I wanted to play golf this weekend, but was pretty worried about getting ripped off a course at 5 o'clock on Saturday when they make their announcement of shelter in place.
Right. And these things are always going to happen. And it's natural also for consumers to light up inside of review space before really thinking it through. So we've all been given a timeout, guys. All right, so what's not timing out? Google updates on a regular basis, and we do use this segment to be able to give our listeners an update of things that are happening. It looks like there was a jump in volatility in search engine rankings, specifically Google, from March 17th to March 21st. SEM had a spike just on March 19th, but Cognitive has a longer duration. Moz is also on a steady incline right there, if you see our screens. And we use all these points of reference to be able to paint the picture here, is that we have seen a week of volatility in the search engine rankings that are being tracked in different industries. Search Metrics also gave us a nice look at things. If you go one more screen in, yep, there you go. This is a 30-day window of time. There's a very small adjustment in Bing compared to the previous 30 days, and 5% down on the Google side of things. But what we're looking at here is a small blip, nothing nearly as radical as what we were dealing with in February. However, there was certainly an argument to be made to Google. Hey, can you hold off doing the updates here for a little bit? We got something else that we're working on in a moment. So if you go over to Rank Ranger, they actually give a really good snapshot. The video carousel is making its way back into SERPs a little bit at a time, but it did drop a lot in the middle of March there. And the related questions, the people also asked questions, has not come back from its drop at the end of February. Lost a good 10 points of visibility, percentage points of visibility along the way. And it's just, I think this is the new norm of not as many people also asked instances there. It's kind of wild. Any takes on that? I know you're in SEM predominantly, but Aaron, what are your thoughts about some of these changes that we're seeing regularly?
I think that Google's just trying to get more things right. Again, I know that we give them a bunch of crap for doing things wrong or swinging or making sweeping changes. Again, I think that this is a bit of a factor of the times and a bit of a factor of just, this is how Google has always worked, is they're going to test things all the time.
Yeah.
And I have a sneaking suspicion the tests that they're not 100% confident in, they are just, right now, because this is not a time where being wrong is really that okay.
No, absolutely not. So, to the Google gods, if you could give us a little bit of a calm sea here, realistically speaking, we'd love it. But again, maybe it's all for the best that we give a little bit of choppy water so we can focus on something besides what's around us at the moment. All right, so thanks to Ahrefs for continuing to be a sponsor of The Edge. Ahrefs makes competitive analysis easy. Their tools show you how competitors are getting traffic from Google and why. You can see the pages of content that send the most traffic to them, the exact keywords, as well as what backlinks are actually helping them rank. And with that, you can replicate and deconstruct their strategies and make better strategies for yourself. So if you're interested in getting significant traffic, go over to Ahrefs today. They have a free trial. Sign up and start swimming in great data like we do over here at the shop. That's it for the Edge news this week. Be sure to check out our full-length interview with Aaron Levy. Also, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to get updated when we actually go live next with our show. And let us know how we're doing. If you would actually, go over to edgeofthewebradio.com and tell us how we're doing with an anonymous poll. We just want to get some feedback from our audience, our listeners, on a regular basis. So check us out. Let us know how we're doing. And by the way, hey, jump in and sign up for the newsletters free of charge, and all this information comes to your inbox on a regular basis. So for all of us over at Edge of the Web, stay safe, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.